Welcome to the 2016 Women's Health Week webcast. My name is Shelley Ware and I will be your host for the evening. We're sorry we were late, there was just that slight technical difficulty, but we're all here now. Now this year's theme is Am I Normal? And what does that mean? Is there such thing as normal? Should we aim to be normal? If we don't think we are normal, is this a big deal or should we do something about it? Normal can mean things like reaching and following a standard, something that is usual, typical or expected. We might say things like, her blood pressure is in the normal range, or that's a pretty normal temperature, so everything's going all right. But what about things like weight and mental health and sex? We have many women telling us that they didn't feel normal and that in certain aspects of their health, they had questions and about their health and things they were worried about and they wanted more information. So here we are all tonight and we're going to address the question, am I normal? We've received many questions from all around Australia, so thank you very much for sending them in, and make sure you keep sending in your questions throughout this webcast and we'll try to answer all of them, won't we, girls? Now, first of all, I would like to introduce our panellists on the webcast. We have Karen Inge, who's a dietitian and author. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
And Maureen Matthews, who's a sex educator and columnist. Welcome to the show, Maureen.
Thank you.
Okay. And Mandy Deeks, who's the Deputy CEO and psychologist with Jean Hales for Women's Health Week. So welcome to you all. Welcome.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you here. Now, earlier this year, we conducted the annual Jean Hales Health Survey. Over 3,000 women told us what they were concerned about, what areas of health they wanted more information on, and what their thoughts were with things like body image and mental health. Health professionals also told us what they thought women wanted to know as well. And over 30% of the women and health professionals lived in regional and rural areas. So we got a really good picture of what women wanted to know when it comes to their health. Now, the top 5 health concerns for women were weight management, followed by female-specific cancers, then mental and emotional health. Menopause and chronic pain were also up there. The first topic we're going to talk about tonight is anxiety, worry and self-esteem. Mandy is going to talk a little bit about the survey findings and answer some of your questions about worry and about body image. So Mandy, tell us about what you found in the survey.
Well, actually, we had some really interesting results and in some ways a little scary, because around 36% of women told us that they actually have worrying thoughts going through their mind. They tend to feel very tense or wound up, and they're very preoccupied with that negative thinking. Mm-hmm. So we knew, and from those results, the top health concerns, and even health professionals telling us that that was the top concern that they had for women coming in their door, that we actually thought, you know, there's something in this. We want to talk about what's normal when it comes to worry and anxiety disorders. Mm. So we actually thought, well, maybe it's good to start with what's the difference. And I think we all, as humans, we worry, we're anxious, we're built to be anxious in actual fact. You know, we need that fight or flight part of us to run away or to protect ourselves. And I think today it's turned on just a little bit more, you know.
A little bit.
A little bit. It's like we're juggling all of these things, and when does worry suddenly become anxiety, and then when does it become an anxiety disorder? And I often say to women, you know, if the anxiety has got to a level, and that's those physical symptoms, the rapid heart rate you can feel, the knot in your tummy, the rapid breathing and the sweaty palms, and if that's starting to interfere with your daily life, then it's really time to do something about it. Not to sort of sit back and think, oh, it'll go away, or as a lot of women say, and they've said that to me, and you know, when I've got my clients sitting in front of me, I thought it was only me. I thought I was going crazy, or you know, I feel quite embarrassed and ashamed. So I think it's important, our message is very much, with so many women telling us they're worrying at such high levels a lot of the time, let's do something about it.
So when you say let's do something about it, you mean go and see a health professional?
Yeah, they could. They definitely could. Or they could actually talk to a trusted friend. You know, sometimes when we just get it out, we tend to hold on to some of these things. We keep them as secrets. And I think the really important message is get it out in some way. You know, we're very individual. So that might be talking with your GP if you feel a bit uncomfortable about talking with friends or family. Thinking about your lifestyle and perhaps getting the physical activity going and watching your sleep, those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Now, we've received quite a number of questions on mental health, and this one seems to have been very common, one that we've received, Mandy. So people said, how do I cope with the constant worry?
It's a good question because that's really what we've been finding. I think that when you have that constant worry, it starts to be debilitating. You start to not be able to sleep as well, not be able to eat as well. So stop. I tend to, talk with clients sometimes about the stop sign. Some people are very visual. They might hear in their head the constant negative talk that's going on. I'm really worried about this, or what if I said that? Should I do this? And if we picture that stop sign and go, what is going on? What's happening for me right now? Am I stressed? Am I upset about things? Have I just had a fight with someone? Am I eating properly? Go back to basics and check in on your lifestyle. Are you drinking too much alcohol? That kind of thing. And I think that knowing yourself, so what are your triggers? There are some people who set us off, and sometimes might be work.
That was what I was thinking. Like sometimes we're surrounded by quite negative people,
Yes.
and that's something where you might need to remove yourself from a situation as well.
Yes, we tend to almost get infected, I think, by those people, and they tend to hang around you, and you need to break that cycle and be kind to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important to make sure that you are kind to yourself. Now, another question that we had was, and it's actually quite touched my heart a little bit, was that I've had anxiety since I was a teenager, and it seems to have affected every part of my life. I can't walk out the door without worrying about whether something bad is going to happen. Am I going to say the wrong thing? Is somebody going to think that I'm a crazy person? I'm finding it harder to go and to leave my home. And when I do go into a social situation, my hands are really shaking. Is that normal?
Okay, so really I think what we're talking about is a social phobia, and we know that anxieties actually start quite young. Depression tends to start more in the 30s. For women, anxiety starts young, and social phobia is one of the youngest, and it can start around the age of 13. And it's, again, those physical symptoms, the racing heart. It's so horrible to have that physical symptom where you think, I can't stand it, I need to avoid it, and you think the best thing is to not go to the social situation because then you'll be calm. You have those thoughts going through your mind, oh, what if I say something that's a bit silly, or what if my hands shake when I'm holding the drink, and people will know. So the important thing, I think, is to know that it's okay. There are a lot of people who do. It's more than shyness too, that there are a lot of people who feel uncomfortable in social situations, and to actually bring that physical relaxation in, calm the physical reaction, challenge some of those unhelpful thinking patterns that we have a little bit of a thought around what you might say, so you've got something up your sleeve if you go into that social situation. And probably my biggest tip would be don't avoid.
Okay, so if you were a parent and you noticed that with your child, what could you do? Like, would you try to encourage open conversation with them to keep that going?
Definitely. The best thing we can do is get it out. Hiding it or thinking that there's something terribly wrong or holding on to a secret is going to do more damage. So I think I would encourage parents to actually have the conversation and try really hard not to let children, or yourself if it's you, to avoid the situation. Give them every support you possibly can to get them through that door, because the best thing you can do is say, I didn't feel all that comfortable, but I did it. And that's really important for our confidence.
And then maybe have a little bit of a chat afterwards about how they felt as well.
Yes.
Make sure you follow up with that.
Yes.
Now, confidence is something we often lack as women, and we have had this great question come in. It says, how can we build women's confidence to seek help when they don't know if what they're going through is normal or not?
Yeah, I actually think, and I'll be interested, I think confidence probably relates to all the topics that we're talking about tonight. I think the thing I used to see walking in my door with women was a lack of confidence and a lowered self-esteem. And when we don't focus on all the things that we can do very well or our achievements, and we tend to, I think as women we do this a lot, we focus on all the things we can't do. So we tend to lose our confidence. And it's really important to have that foundation, because when we have the foundation, we actually can survive a little bit more in the stressful times. So I think some of my tips would be around thinking about yourself. Do you focus on your achievements, or do you focus on all the things that you don't do very well? So tip the balance in the favour of the achievements. I think also think about people in your life who are confident and take a few tips. You know, what do you admire? You know, I often will talk with some people who I think look amazingly confident, and they'll say, oh, inside I'm really dying inside, but they kind of fake it till they make it.
Yeah, we all have a little toolbox. Confidence people have a toolbox. We get out the tools we need at certain stages, and I guess that's what we'd like to encourage women to have, their own toolbox, what works for them.
Yep, definitely.
Now, body image is another topic that women were very interested in. What did the survey say about this?
So, again, the survey told us that appearance is very important, and I suspect a little bit of it is linked to weight management, which Karen will talk about. We found that 83% of women actually check their appearance before they walk out the door. And maybe it is that, you know, that weight management where you can tell it's right there. It's the media images that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. But interestingly, the survey told us that the biggest influence are our family and friends. And I also used to find this. I would find that probably what tipped women over the edge was a comment from a family member or a friend who might have said, oh my golly, you've put on weight, or
Our heads all just wobbled on their shoulders.
Yeah, it's like, or you hear the comment, and I'm really careful about this now as a parent, oh my goodness, my bum looks really big in that, and you don't even know you're saying it, but that tends to really filter down to our children, and we really need to be careful about our public comments. So that was some of the findings.
Okay. Yeah. Now, we had this question, with increasing access to and often abuse on social media, how do we encourage young people to be positive about their body image and self-esteem when dieting and eating disorders are common amongst this cohort?
Yeah, social media is a whole new thing for us, really, isn't it, in terms of body image? We know there's a lot of really good research to say that just looking at an image of a model for 2 minutes makes us feel a lot more negative about our body, and we're bombarded with those images. But now social media is there. We've got this whole Fitspiration movement of, you know, Instagram, where it's supposed to be focusing on health and fitness, but actually the messages are more related to appearance. So I think that, again, it comes back to that confidence. It also comes back, probably if we're talking about too much social media, a diet of too much of it, knowing what our triggers are. And I love a message that I would hear from older women, and that was that, you know, by the time they're older, they say, I have spent so much time worrying about my weight and my body, and I actually want to focus on my health. And you know what? When you focus on your health, you feel better, and you walk into a room and you're more confident. So if we can start focusing on our health.
Absolutely. I look back at what I did when I was a young girl, thinking that I was of the wrong look and appearance, and I think, why did I waste those years?
Yes.
I can't believe it. Now, another question on body image we received was, what strategies would you suggest for building acceptance of your body? I have lost a lot of weight over the past few years, and I hear this quite often. You know, they've become a healthy size, but they they haven't actually matched it with their mind yet, so they're not really content with their figure. Knowing that I'm too critical of myself doesn't seem to keep me happy about my body.
Again, I guess we think we're going to be happier when we lose a weight because we think that it's all related to appearance, but it's really about that confidence thing, I think, inside and that negative body image. You know, you don't even realise how many times a day you're negative. You can walk past a shop window and you're kind of like, oh my golly, do I really look like that? So if we catch ourselves and we think about the other things that we are really good at, our bodies are amazing things.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't give it credit for the really clever stuff that it does. So I think if we start to focus on that health, the cleverness of our bodies, we take the pressure off and give ourselves our identity in other ways. That's a healthy start. And practicing some acceptance. You know, often we spend our energy fighting so much, oh, I should look like this or I should be this, but it's about, wow, how clever are you for now being healthy if you've lost that weight, and really own that.
And loving yourself as well, and accepting yourself.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So it might be good really now to, I think it's a nice segue, if you like, to Karen and weight management.
Absolutely. Now, Karen is going to talk about weight management and answer many questions that we received in relation to weight and diet. Now, before we hear from Karen, here are some findings from the survey that relate to healthy living. As you can see from the slide, many women told us that they make more effort into actually eating a balanced diet and a nutritional diet, and good health is one of the most important things in their life, so that was very pleasing to see. And on the diet slide, 25% of women are telling us that they will crash diet often or sometimes. Now this slide shows us some of the physical activity results, and interestingly, women who are 65 years and older were most active. Now Karen, I love this first question. I hate getting on the scales every day. Is weighing yourself the best thing to do to manage weight?
Well, I shouldn't laugh really, because these scales seem to cause so much anxiety for so many women.
Yep.
And really, when you think about it, they're only a tool that that can give you useful information. So they're something that we shouldn't really be frightened of. But we shouldn't place a lot of emphasis on the scale, because when you stand on the scale, I mean, you're weighing the total you. You're not getting an idea of how much fat versus bone versus muscle versus what you're wearing, or fluid content. You're just weighing the total you. So it doesn't really tell you about your body composition, but it does help you monitor yourself. So it's about knowing numbers, provided it doesn't cause you any anxiety. But I think it's it should be, scales should be used in conjunction with other measurements, and I think the tape measure is a really good guide, because when you measure your waist, for example, your waist circumference, if you can get a figure of 80 or less, then you're going to be at low risk of having any diseases associated with being overweight. If your waist circumference is 88 centimetres or higher, then you might be at a higher risk. But do be pretty honest with yourself the way you measure your tape measure. You don't squeeze it in so tightly that you'll I've got it under 80. So it's about being realistic. But then, of course, another measurement to really see if how your weight's tracking is really to use a dress or a skirt or a pair of pants from last season, and see if it still fits or not. But I think, if getting back to the scales, I think it's important not to weigh yourself 3 times a day or even every day. I think the idea really is to use it as monitoring. Weigh yourself first thing in the morning after you've been to the toilet without anything on, and perhaps monitor yourself weekly, just to give you a bit of an idea of whether you're going up or really even if you're losing weight, because people can lose weight as well. That's that can be a bit of a concern.
Yeah, definitely. I went through that. I lost about 4 kilos, and it was like, why did that even happen? And that was something that I'd monitored. I hadn't noticed it with my own body, but then I went off and had a bit of a check because it just seemed too dramatic. So yeah, those things. So they do have their place, that's for sure, but not every day. Like
Not every
three
day.
times a day to the anxiety.
And not if they really upset you,
That's
because there are plenty
Yeah.
of other measurements that you can use.
Yes. Now, this question is also related to how we measure ourselves. Do you think BMI is really a good indicator of healthy weight, or are there other factors? Well, we've talked about some of the other factors we've considered, but
Yes.
BMI.
Look, I think, again, it's useful, but I think if we're talking about what is normal or what is healthy, then, you know, when I plug my height and weight into the body mass index chart, I did a bit of an experiment and pretended I weighed a lot less and then pretended I
yes.
weighed a lot more.
I've done that.
And if you go as low as BMI of 18.5, which is still considered normal, and then you take it up to 24.9, which is still considered normal, the difference is actually 17 kilograms.
Yes.
So, you know, we sort of tend to think, oh, you know, we've got to keep our weight almost at exactly the same weight every single day. Well, that's impossible for a female because we have fluid fluctuations, etc. But there's quite a wide span of weight that is considered to be where you are still at a reasonably healthy weight. That means that you're not likely to develop any diseases, lifestyle diseases associated with being overweight, even though for a lot of women, you're probably thinking, 17 kilos, that's a huge difference. It might not be right for you, but it's considered to be normal for that height. Because remember that BMI is weight in kilograms divided by height in metres squared. So for all the mathematicians out there,
Just got click, click.
but there are, certainly just get onto the Gene Health website. If they haven't got the calculator there, you can certainly find one.
Absolutely.
But I think, just getting back to your question, to the question that someone asked, again, body mass index doesn't take into account body composition. So if you are very muscular, you're very athletic, then you're going to probably be at the top of the healthy weight range, or may even be into the overweight category, but you're not going to be fat. So you've got to realise that there are variations, and again, it's useful and it's a useful thing, but there certainly are inaccuracies with it.
Absolutely. Now, another question that relates to what I talk about with my children, there are so many rules out there, and somebody asked this question, I am so sick of all the messages that we receive telling me what I should and what I shouldn't eat. Do I follow the healthy eating pyramid, the plate guide? Or I'm so confused, I often think, you know, I'd be better off not having to worry about food at all. What guidelines should I follow?
Oh, that's such a good question. And, you know, it really is it's a very good question, because in my life as a dietitian, which is quite a few years, I have not seen so much confusion. And there's a great nutrition awareness. I think people are so nutritionally aware and really want to eat healthily, as we saw from the results of the survey, but there's an enormous amount of confusion. I mean, should you be paleo? Should you be eating gluten? You've got all of these intolerances now. You know, low carb, high carb, no sugar, plenty of sugar, fat, high fat, saturated. It's very confusing. So we're going back to the government guidelines, and basically the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating is sort of the plate, if you like, which talks about the fact that half your plate should be vegetables. And I don't think anybody would really disagree with that. A quarter should be your protein source, which is basically your meat or fish or chicken or vegetarian alternatives like legumes, etc. And the other quarter should be some nice nutritious carbs, you know, healthy grains or starchy vegetables, those sorts of things. And the pyramid is really a very similar approach, with the base of your diet being plant foods. And then it goes up in terms of your fats and oils being at the top of the tree, and then discretionary foods, which are all the foods that have little or no nutritional value, are out there. Alcohol's out there, but maybe we could put a little bit in just on the top of the very top of the pyramid. But I think my message really is to eat. I think you've got to eat according to your genetic blueprint. There's more than one way to have a healthy diet. We don't all have to follow the same kind of eating pattern. So I think understand your genetic blueprint. If you haven't had your genome measured, then basically look at your family history and think about your cultural background, like what were you brought up on, the Mediterranean diet, the Asian diet, the Aussie diet, and look at your food preferences, what you'd like to eat, what your family likes to eat, and try and incorporate all of that. And don't have too many rules. I'm saying don't. You shouldn't really say don't. Try not to have too many rules, because I think it's too many rules causes food anxiety, and it sets you up to feel, I suppose, feel that you're failing if you have a little piece of chocolate or you have something like that. I think it's healthy eating is really common sense. But my message is eat a variety of foods and include the foods that you love, because that way, remember, eating is a pleasure. It's a social thing.
It's so important to enjoy food. That's one of the things. And I always talk to my son about that healthy relationship with food, like as a friend. It's so important.
That's right. And if you get onto the Gene House website, there are some fabulous recipes, and really on the website there's a lot of information about healthy eating and how to make healthy food taste delicious.
Yes, wonderful. Now, as a mum and as a teacher, this one is really important, I think. So I'm worried about my daughter who wants to restrict all fats, all sugars and all carbs. What message can I give her? And she's 14.
Oh, 14. Well, I think we find quite often that when, particularly with adolescent girls actually, that it's really not about the food or it's not about the diet that they're on. They're really self-esteem issues. And when you're developing and growing, sometimes life just gets, I suppose, out of control. You feel you are losing control. You're going through puberty. You're facing all of these challenges at school, etc. So one thing you can control in your life is what you eat. And a lot of these young women actually, feel that by restricting food, they actually are taking control over their eating. Sometimes it's attention-seeking behaviour. Sometimes it's like a little 2-year-old refusing to eat because they want mummy or daddy's attention. So I think the important thing is not to focus on the food, not to say, oh, you should be eating a more varied diet, and we should put sort of, I suppose, more foods into your diet. It's not about that. It's about trying to encourage your daughter to find out what she's good at. This is really very much Mandy's area, and what they can achieve. And this is where sport or music can be really good, because once these children or adolescents, young people find something that they're good at, then they feel less, they don't need to control their food intake so much. But I still would sort of get in the message somehow that at 14, it's probably one of the most important times in the growth and development in terms of growth. If you want to be tall, iron levels are very important. Bone health is very important at this stage because you're laying the foundation. But you really don't want to focus on those messages. It's more about getting to the root of the problem, and I think a lot of it will be more psychological. And you find a lot of young girls are turning vegetarian at this stage too.
Yes, that is very common. Or pescatarian is another fancy one.
That's right. And again, it's not always about the animals. It might be sort of, it could lead into an eating disorder down if they keep restricting, cutting out various foods out of their diet. So it's something that you need to talk about early on, and remember that it could be a self-esteem issue.
Yes, or it could be, like you said, something like my son, he wanted to cut out gluten because there were 5 children in the classroom that didn't have gluten, so he felt like, well, then I should cut out gluten. So we obviously had to talk about it, but luckily he was wanting to talk to me about it and I could explain it to him.
Yeah, well, you raise a very important point, because being part of the group and peer pressure and the influence of your peers is very great at this stage. And you find that with 14-year-old girls, there is this enormous pressure to be thin, to lose weight, to be a size, whatever it is, 4 or 6, it varies today. So there is that, and that's what a lot of parents are frightened about. They sort of think, oh, should I really mention anything about weight because it might trigger an eating disorder? But I think it's fairly normal for young girls to go through this stage. It's I wouldn't panic. I would just be mindful of it and realise that the majority of young girls will go through this stage.
Absolutely.
It's pretty normal.
Pretty normal stuff for sure. So thank you for that, Karen. Now we're going to hear from Maureen, who is going to answer some questions for us about sex. Now, Maureen, the survey told us that many health professionals think women find it very difficult to actually talk about sex, painful sex and vulva irritation. We also discovered that while women are going to get their pap smears and their blood pressure checked, that only 20% of women are actually having sexual health checks, which is quite low, isn't it, when you think about that? Now, one of the questions we received, Maureen, was, why do I experience painful sex?
Well, one of the first things to keep in mind is that it is never normal to experience pain during sex. If you are experiencing pain during sex, then you do need to talk to your doctor. And there can be a wide range of reasons. Women post-menopause can have vaginal dryness, which can lead to some pain. Some women suffer from irritations due to using soaps and scented products. Some women have a psychological problem whereby they clamp whenever somebody tries to have penetrative sex. So there can be a wide range of reasons, but the bottom line is it isn't normal, and it is a good idea to go and get a medical checkup first and foremost, and never go, oh, well, you know, I'm getting older, or just put it to one side. It's not something that you can just say is normal.
And if you don't get the answer from a doctor, it's important to find another doctor that will listen and to keep going to another doctor.
Well, the great thing is that we do have facilities like Gene Health for Women's Health. So if you have a traditional GP that you're comfortable going to because your kid's got mumps, or you know you've sprained an ankle or something, but you feel uncomfortable talking about sexual matters, then do seek out a women's health service and get the more specialised advice, so that you know, because not every doctor is really up there with everything. And the one thing about sex that I'd like to make a point of is that everybody feels comfortable talking about their sprained ankle or their blocked nose, but even doctors have baggage around sex and sexuality. So there are some doctors who are uncomfortable themselves talking about sex, in which case you do need to find a doctor who is comfortable and trained to assist you with that specific area. Otherwise, you could both be bouncing your anxieties off each other.
This is true, I can imagine. Now, another question we received, it's a bit related to what you just said then, is that how can we help women be more comfortable with their own sexuality?
Well, this is a really big one, and I think it reflects back on what the other two speakers have said. Not comparing yourself with models, not comparing yourselves. Everybody seems to imagine that all their friends are having this great sex life and they're the only ones who aren't. What people need to do is to learn to be comfortable and confident, as people have been saying before, with what is and how they are. And a sexual problem as such is usually a difference in the couple in appetite. So if you have a couple who are both really happy to watch the 7 o'clock news, have a glass of Milo and go to bed and go to sleep, then they haven't got a sex problem because they're both very, very happy. The problem as such arises when one partner wants sex more than the other, and there's some discrepancy and some inability to communicate. So what is normal is what is normal for you and what you and your partner are happy with. There are no standards. There's no judge at the end of the bed holding up a card going 8.4 like in the Olympics or something, you know, really is.
Goodness for that.
Yeah.
So now, with such easy access to the internet, this is a question we received from a couple of women actually. Pornography is now at everyone's fingertips, and many young men feel that it is the norm and they expect their partner to participate in similar practices. How do we strengthen young women's resilience and self-esteem so they feel less pressure to engage in sexual practices that they might actually feel uncomfortable with?
Yes, this is a very big question, especially with young people. The boys are unfortunately getting their sex education through pornography and assuming that within any normal sexual encounter you're going to swing from the chandeliers, tie each other up with ropes, and you know, there'll be oral sex, anal sex, and of course that's not what an ordinary couple who are interacting do. That's a fantasy. It's just as drivers don't get in their cars and do the Tokyo Drift Boys. It's you know, these are overhyped fantasies that people get in their heads and talk amongst their friends. I think with the girl, well, the bottom line for anybody is sex should be pleasurable for both partners. And if you're being asked or pressured to do something that you don't find pleasurable and you don't enjoy, then don't do it. And okay, you might think, oh, you know, he won't think I'm cool, or he'll say, oh, if you loved me, you'd do it. All of that is nonsense, and it's where confidence comes in again, where you love yourself, you respect yourself, you know what your boundaries are, and at the end of the day, you're going to have a more healthy and respectful relationship if you can communicate that and stick to your guns.
And it always comes back to that, you can say no. Like, you are entitled to say no. You don't have to say yes just because that's what they are asking you to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now,
yes.
this question is about guilt, Maureen. How do women reconcile feelings of guilt over juggling work, there's marriage, family, and is masturbation something to feel guilty about for a middle-aged woman?
There's a lot of guilt and shame around sexuality in society of all ages and all levels. I think it's really important for people to accept the fact that their sexual selves are just as important as the other aspects of their personality. It's not something trivial, it's not something to be ashamed of. And I believe that for women, learning what gives them pleasure helps them to guide their partner into giving them pleasure. And I'm a firm believer that masturbation is, I don't really like the word masturbation because it's got a value judgment attached to it, but I think self-pleasure and self-exploration and learning how your body responds is a fundamental part of learning to be your unique, authentic sexual self.
I much prefer that too. But yeah, that does have that harshness that has come and passed down, and there's quite a judgment with that word.
Yes.
Now, another one, I honestly don't feel normal when it comes to sex. I feel like I don't like it the way that everyone else does. I don't want it as much. I don't understand all of the appeal of all of these sexual images that we're bombarded with every day. How do I know what is normal?
Well, again, yes, we are bombarded with a lot of false images and a lot of false expectations. I mean, sex in the movies, nobody's bodies make slapping noises, and, you know, there are no awkward moments, and your head doesn't hit the headboard. You know, I mean, real sex and fantasy sex are two very different things. If you are, again, comparing yourself to what you think is good sex, then you're going to become anxious. Good sex is what you enjoy, what you and your partner enjoy, and it doesn't have to include any of the way out things that people have in sexual imagery. It can be cuddling. It doesn't even have to be intercourse. It could be erotic kissing. You know, a lot of people forget that foreplay and kissing and cuddling, when you were teenagers in the old days, those were the big erotic things.
Oh.
They were as hot as hell, and we're putting the stakes too high of what we think good normal sex is.
Now, it's not easy to start those conversations with your partner about sex. How should I start a conversation?
It's really embarrassing. I've been with my partner for 40 years, and it's still one of those questions that's hard to talk about. One of the first things I would suggest is, don't have a serious talk about sex when you're actually in bed together, engaging in intimacy. At that time, people's feelings and emotions can be a bit vulnerable. Pick a time when you're getting on well, when you're guaranteed you've got some privacy, and there's goodwill between you, and have the conversation in that setting, so that you can then, whatever you resolve then, you can take to the bedroom, but don't try to do it when one or other partner is either anxious or sexually aroused.
I think that's really important for any topic, isn't it, that you bring up in your life. Now, one last one. Is it normal after being married for over 30 years, but only being 50, for your husband not to want sex?
Well, this is another myth that, you know, that as women get older, they go off sex, but the men stay rampant. And that is just an absolute furphy, along with so many other myths around sex. There are some men whose libido goes down as well as women whose libido goes down. There are some women who stay incredibly highly sexed and their male partner's libido goes down. And as I say, where it forms a problem is where the female partner in this instance is still feeling that they would like to have an active sex life, and their partner's libido has declined, and that's where that's where the communication has to come in, and maybe even if it's really causing strain in the relationship, maybe even consider talking to a sex therapist, so that you can get some professional guidance in how to reach a point where both people are getting their needs met and nobody's really desperately unhappy or in denial or forcing themselves to do something that they don't really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've asked some of the speakers to put together some of their tips for take-home tips. Mandy, what do you want the women to remember?
I think that I've talked a little bit about triggers and thinking about you. So think about what sets you off. You know, what does affect your mental health or increases your stress or anxiety or even your sadness? Is it that you're getting enough sleep? Are you eating the right things? Have you just had that difficult conversation? Do you have too much to do, and how are you handling that? So first off, think about your triggers, and they're your triggers, they're not other people. Often we feel, again, judged, or we think that, oh, we should behave in a certain way. If it's sleep for you, that's okay. If it's, you know, some people will say, oh, I can actually do lots of things during the day and I only have 3 hours sleep, and then you're left there sitting thinking, wow, I must be hopeless. Think about what is your trigger. Go back to basics. That's probably one of the very first things I encourage people to do, because I think when we're sad or anxious, the first thing that goes, eating a nice, balanced, nutritious diet. Yeah, being active. We tend to think, oh, I can't face going out, but we actually know that having a bit of physical activity, 30 minutes, 3 times a week, increases those feel-good hormones, and you always feel better. I actually talk to clients and myself. I go for a walk 3 times a week and I feel better mentally. The effects on my body are nice, but it's my mental state. I can think more clearly.
I'm not as foggy. I do sleep better. So really try and motivate yourself, and maybe it's with another person and you get a bit of a chat. And, oh, that's always fun.
But having my son, I find that he sees me as the role modelling good exercise and good healthy lifestyle. So that's, he says, aren't you going for your walk, Mum? Isn't it time for you to go off? And, you need that time, and off you go. And then he sees exercise as part of the normal lifestyle as well, which is really important.
Actually, when you just said that's your time too, I think it's a nice time to be on your own. And I don't have headphones or anything, and if I suddenly find myself mulling over something, I'll challenge it, and I might do a little bit about probably what is my next tip, being mindful and being in the present. And so if I go for a walk, or if I'm just sitting and trying to actually have a bit of downtime, I kind of ground myself and say, okay, what can I see, what can I hear, what can I smell, what am I touching? And that brings you very much into that moment, and it just settles you down a little bit, and it's a bit of your time, which I think is really important, because the one thing we know is you cannot be anxious and calm at the same time. It's one or the other, and I choose calm.
I choose calm. Now, mindfulness, you touched on that a little bit, but can you just expand? Mindfulness is actually a way of life that people are now choosing to live, and there's lots of help. And the Jean Hales website have a lot of that for mindfulness.
We've actually got some great podcasts on mindfulness. So if you want to go on the Jean Hales website, in the mental health section, there's a lot of good books. We also have a book in the shop on mindfulness, because it is a skill, and even relaxation is a skill. And it's important that when you are feeling good, it's a bit like when you're having those difficult conversations. If you increase that skill, you can call on it in the troubled times. So,
absolutely. We're teaching it at primary schools now as well. It's a really important way for children to prepare themselves, because we know that the world has gotten busier and busier. I'd hate to think what it's going to be like when those children get there to become adults.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's just moving so quickly.
Yes.
So thank you, Mandy. Now, Karen, what are your take-home tips?
Well, it's just don't make the scale your enemy. I think it is useful for monitoring change. Weighing yourself is useful for monitoring changes over time. As I mentioned, just to, if it does upset you weighing yourself, then basically don't, and use other measurements, the waist circumference, because really from a health perspective, it's where the fat is deposited that really makes a difference to your health or not. So I think, I think that's important about weight. As far as what to eat, I think remembering that what you put on your plate is going to have far more importance and significance on your health than what you take off. We all tend to focus, I'm not going to eat sugar, no fat, no chocolate, no alcohol. It's very negative messaging. So the way to think about healthy eating is to think about, well, what can I eat to make myself feel vital, healthy, energetic, think well, have a great body shape if that's what you're after, have plenty of energy, all of those things. So I think it's about eating at least 30 different foods every day, making sure that you are getting your 2 serves of fruit and 5 vegetables, that you're having whole grain cereals, grain products, if you, as long as you don't have to restrict gluten, but there are plenty of alternatives there. I think the important thing is not to eliminate major food groups out of your diet unnecessarily. So if you are going to, if you can't tolerate dairy, for example, make sure that you are having alternative sources that are also going to give you the calcium so that your bones are strong. I think it's also allowing yourself, if you like, to be indulgent with food at times, so that what you do 80% of the time is going to have far more impact than the 20% that you may not be sort of eating the foods that you think you should be. So enjoy that piece of cake. Don't feel guilty and don't associate guilt with that. I think it's fluid. Reach for water when you're thirsty, because a lot of the time we feel hungry but we're really thirsty, so drinking plenty of water is very important. I think, if you don't have to have the soft drinks, then I'd cut them out because they're the low-hanging fruit, and we know that they have been associated with sort of being overweight. But just watch your portions. Put your food on a smaller plate if you are gaining weight, because it's all about visual things. And sometimes if you think about what your grandmother, her dishes and her glasses, etc., we are now sort of having huge crockery and cutlery, not cutlery doesn't matter, but crockery and glassware. So I think it's about putting things on smaller plates, and that's certainly going to help.
Yeah, everywhere you go, they want you to upsize everything. So I just say, no, thank you, regular for me.
Yeah. So, and enjoy your food, because eating is a pleasure, and enjoy it with friends, because it's about being part of society and community and family, and eat together as a family as often as you can, because a lot of problems can be solved over the dinner table. They can be created too, but they can be at least discussed.
That's absolutely.
So I think they're important. And just to reiterate what Mandy was saying, that I think the most important thing really is, and I mentioned it before, is to relax about food, have very few food rules, throw the rules out of the window, and become an intuitive eater. Listen to your body, eat when you're hungry, stop before you're actually really full, and just relax and be mindful in your eating as well, and don't be frightened of any food. It can't really, it just doesn't have that power over you, so don't be food phobic and develop food anxiety. And I think, unless you have food intolerances and things like that, I wouldn't be avoiding any food unnecessarily. And if you do need some assistance with your own diet or your family's diet, then certainly see a dietitian, and there are plenty at Jean Howe's, and really get some professional advice if you are concerned.
Absolutely. Some very good tips there to take home. Now, Maureen, what take-home tips have you got for us?
Well, first and foremost, that idea that pain is not normal, or physical discomfort, or changes. If you feel that there are changes in your libido that might be attributed to ill health, be aware that your health, your body as it ages, all these things can impact on your sexuality. So don't be reluctant to go and talk to a medical professional to eliminate that from the scenario, because there are so many things that can drag your libido down and are actually to do with something completely different. It might be that you're overtired because you're anemic. It might be that that your blood pressure's high. There can be so many things that can impact. So be aware of your sexual health in that regard, and seek help if you need it. The second really important tip is love yourself. Love and accept yourself. You cannot love somebody else if you don't love and accept yourself. And in her very good recent book, Come As You Are, Dr. Emily Nagoski challenges women to spend 5 minutes every morning standing naked in front of a mirror, which for a lot of women would be very challenging, and list something you like about yourself. And she says it might be on the first day that you could only say, I like my earlobes, or my eyelashes are thick and lovely. But do that every day until you reach a point where you can look at yourself in the mirror with acceptance and love and admiration for the wonderful machine that your body is. Because often, if you don't look at yourself, the mental image you have isn't accurate. And we need to learn to love what is, not what we think should be. That's very important. And the third thing is, you cannot look to somebody else to give you sexual pleasure. So many people go, my husband is a lousy lover or whatever. You are responsible for your own sexual pleasure. You are responsible for understanding what gives you pleasure, and then you guide your partner and you share pleasure with your partner. If you are totally ignorant about which parts of your body feel good to be stroked, whether you like soft touch or firm massage, if you don't know any of those things, then your partner can't possibly know, because there's no handbook issued. So that's why self-pleasuring and self-exploration are really vital to knowing what you would enjoy in a healthy, enjoyable, pleasurable, satisfying sexual life.
Absolutely. Now, a question that has just come in says, I don't have a sex drive, but my partner has a high sex drive, and I don't want sex every night, and this is causing me to turn away.
Well, there is one problem, I think, in couples where there's a mismatch of sex drives, is that the woman or the person with the low libido can often think, if I even respond to a peck on the cheek or a little hug, my partner's going to take that as a symbol that I'm ready for sex. And so they shut down completely. So sometimes it's about negotiating with your partner about, I'm really happy to sit with you on the sofa and watch a movie and cuddle and hold hands, but that's as far as I want to go. And the funny thing is that once that person can trust their partner to let them stop when they want to stop, over time they will go further, because often it's the fear of being pressured that makes them switch off. So your partner is more likely to engage with you if you respect them when they give the indication that they're now ready to back off. Absolutely. And give that some time to develop.
Absolutely. Now, unfortunately, we haven't been able to answer your medical questions because we're not doctors. So if you have a medical question, we would like you to go and seek professional help and make sure that you go to a doctor. So if they haven't been answered tonight, that is why. So thank you so much for your time and the fabulous questions that we have received. Some of the questions that we didn't get to tonight, make sure you go to the website, because there is plenty of information on the Jean Hales website which might give you some answers, like why is women's fertility declining rapidly? That is a fair point, and especially from someone who had to do IVF, that was a question that I asked a lot of. Now, are there ways to reduce menopause symptoms without taking HRT? Why is it so effective? What is the most effective and safest way to combat the symptoms of menopause with hot flushes and vaginal dryness? Is there any connection between leaking from the bladder and constipation? So these were other questions that we didn't actually get time to answer, but you can make sure that you go onto the website and they will be there. So thank you to Mandy, to Maureen and to Karen for being here tonight. It was wonderful to have your professional feedback and be able to answer everybody's questions. So we value your feedback out there. Please complete the survey located in the tab above the slides. We'd love to hear from you. And the recording will be available tomorrow, tomorrow lunchtime, just in time for day 2 of the Women's Health Week. So make sure you check out day 1's content on the website so we can get everybody there. So thank you once again, girls. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.